Shadows whisper secrets that only those willing to listen can perceive. Here, in the echoes of night, every story is a portal, every word a step deeper into the darkness. If those invisible voices touch your soul, if the chill down your spine is more than just a shiver, don't forget to like and subscribe. By doing so, you keep the flame alive that illuminates this abyss, allowing more echoes to be released. Now, steady your breathing, turn off the lights, and stay. The story is about to begin. The night crept to the village like a veil of shadows, enveloping each hut, each dry log, each lost soul. The wind whispered forgotten secrets, and the moon, full and arrogant, floated in the sky like a pale eye watching everything. The village of Piedra Moura bore a curse as old as the twisted trees surrounding it. The legend of a werewolf. No one dared utter his name, as if the mere mention could summon him from the shadows. But he existed. Everyone knew. There were signs, massive footprints embedded in the mud, carcasses of animals torn apart and abandoned in the fields like profane offerings. And above all, the howls, heartbreaking wails that echoed through the forest, sometimes distant, sometimes so close they froze the blood. Among the villagers was a man named Elias, a reclusive widower with a lost gaze and callous hands. He was known for his melancholy, a deep sadness that consumed him from within, as if he carried an invisible burden. It was said that his wife, Clara, had disappeared years ago on one of those full moon nights. Some believed she had run away. Others whispered that something had taken her. That night, Elias felt the air was different. The silence was not a respite, but a threat. The village dogs did not bark. They only whimpered, hiding beneath verandas and in the shadows. The wind smelled of iron, a metallic scent that infiltrated his nostrils like a warning. As the hours passed, a crash echoed from the forest, breaking branches, tearing boughs. Something immense was moving among the trees. Elias bolted the door, but his fingers trembled. He knew that night would not end like the others. A howl, long, heart-wrenching. The wooden door vibrated with the sound, as if the very house felt fear. Elias retreated to the corner of the room, his wide-open eyes fixed on the door. Outside, heavy footsteps resonated on the damp earth. A scratch, long, dragging, crossed the wooden door. Elias held his breath. Then came the silence. For a moment, he dared to believe the creature had left. But when he turned, a window shattered. A hairy, grotesque arm broke through the glass, claws as long as daggers, and a beastly shadow crept in. Elias had no time to flee. The stench of decay surrounded him. Yellow eyes shone in the dim light, eyes not only of a beast but of something aware. A growl resonated in its chest. The creature advanced. The night knew no witnesses, only the silence broken by muffled screams and the crimson trail that the indifferent moon illuminated. When morning finally came, the pale sun barely pierced the dense mist devouring Piedra Moura. The houses, still and silent, appeared like wooden and stone tombs, and an oppressive silence hung over the village. There was no birdsong, no murmur of people, only the wind, always the wind, slipping through door cracks like invisible fingers. It was young Tomas who found Elias's house door ajar, though it splintered and marked by claws no ordinary animal could possess. The blood, now dry, formed grotesque patterns on the dirt floor, as if someone or something had dragged its prize beyond the trees. The villagers gathered, but few dared to enter. The scent of iron still permeated the air, mixed with something older and wilder. At the center of the room, on the old oak table, lay a single item, Clara's ring, gleaming cold under the dim light. Speculations began. Some whispered that Elias had finally found his beloved, or at least what was left of her. Others said the curse had claimed him, that the beast did not kill out of hunger, but for revenge. Each theory was darker than the last. But one thing was certain. Elias had disappeared, and the werewolf was more real than ever. The following night, the villagers reinforced doors and windows, locked their animals in the barns, and the elders whispered prayers, as if words could ward off teeth and claws. The forest silence became more menacing than any roar, as if the night itself held its breath, waiting. Meanwhile, beyond the twisted trees, something prowled. Deep tracks toward the ground, following a winding path to a forgotten clearing, the place where years ago Clara's torn veil was found. It was there, under the full moon, that the creature stopped. Golden eyes, intense, stared into the darkness. A soft growl escaped its throat. But there was something more in the beast's gaze, a flash of something human, a pain that did not belong to predator. On the third night, Tomas woke to sound, a slow, calculated scratch on the wall of his house. The young man held his breath, his wide-open eyes fixed on the door. The sound ceased for a moment, only to be replaced by a howl too close, echoing inside him like a sharp blade. The village slowly woke, candles lit by trembling hands, but no one dared to venture outside. Fear was now a living presence among them, an invisible shadow creeping from house to house. In the morning, they found Tomas's door marked but intact. However, by the threshold, something made everyone hold their breath. A freshly cut heart, still wet, lay on the ground, too small to belong to an animal. The elders interpreted it as a warning. "He wants something," said one of the oldest women, her voice trembling with fear. Or someone. The heavy footsteps returned the following night. But this time, they stopped in front of the old church in the center of the village. An abandoned structure for years, its walls covered in moss and its stained glass windows shattered by time. The howls echoed among the stone columns, and for the first time, a shadow was sighted. Not only a beast, but a figure limping through the darkness, as if carrying the weight of two souls within one body. And then came the whisper, a raspy, dragging voice, interrupted by a growl. "Clara?" The villagers listened, petrified. The beast, which once seemed an irrational monster, now revealed something much worse, a human echo, a pain transcending flesh and fur. Tomas, driven by insane courage, was the only one to follow the tracks the next morning. They led beyond the church to a forgotten cave deep in the forest. Inside, he found impossible remnants of old clothing, Clara's faded dress, and beside them, a hunched figure. It was Elias, but he was no longer Elias. The man Tomas knew was buried beneath layers of fur, distorted muscles, and feral eyes. And yet there were tears that fell salty and human. Elias looked at the young man and, in one last moment of lucidity, murmured, "She never left. She was taken," before the wolf took control once more. A month had passed since that night, when Tomas last saw Elias, or what was left of him. The village of Piedra Moura had become an even gloomier place, where fear seeped into the walls of the houses and into the distrustful gazes of its inhabitants. The nights were long, unending, and the silence of the forest sounded like a mute scream that never ceased. Time, however, brought no relief. The footprints kept appearing at dawn, tracing tortuous paths around the houses, as if the creature prowled in search of something or someone. And although no one dared to speak openly, everyone knew that Elias, or what he had become, was still there, hidden in the shadows, a prisoner of his own curse. In the second week of that fateful month, 2 new faces arrived in the village. Father Anselmo and his niece, Cecilia. The old priest had been summoned by the elders, who believed that only faith could face the beast. Cecilia, young and quiet, carried with her an air of melancholy, as if her soul had already known horrors that most could never imagine. Father Anselmo took residence in the abandoned old church, dusting off the pews and lighting forgotten candles. "Faith will be our wall," he said, his voice hoarse and determined, though his eyes betrayed the doubt gnawing at him within. Cecilia, on the other hand, began helping Tomas and other youths with the nightly patrols. Despite her delicate gestures, there was something fierce about her, a hidden fire beneath her fragile surface. When asked about her past, she would only avert her gaze, as if her pain were a secret seal with iron and fire. In the third week, terror came knocking on the village's door once more. At dawn, they found the body of an old hunter, Bernardo, hanging at the forest's edge. His chest had been torn apart, and beside his corpse, something even worse, a note written in blood, in a trembling but human script. "She calls me. Listen." The signature read, "Elias." The village plunged into hysteria. If before the beast was merely an irrational monster, now there was something far more sinister, A human mind trapped in a beastly body, a predator with memory, pain, and desire. That night, Tomas, Cecilia, and Father Anselmo decided to stand guard inside the church. The candles flickered, casting long shadows on the stone walls, while the wind blew like a profane whisper through the cracks. At midnight, the sound came. Slow, deep scratches echoed outside. The wood of the main door groaned under pressure of something immense, and a muffled growl made the already fractured stained glass tremble. Clara, the hoarse voice, a mixture of wolf and man, resonated from the other side. Father Anselmo clutched his crucifix, murmuring prayers. Cecilia, however, approached the door, her trembling hand brushing the bolt. "He won't stop," she whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. "It's not just a beast, it's a lost man." Before she could do anything, the next impact shattered part of the door, and a monstrous claw tore through the air, ripping away a piece of the wood. The creature was there, massive, panting, its golden eyes reflecting the flickering candlelight. Tomas pulled Cecilia back, and the priest raised his voice in a desperate cry of faith. The wolf retreated for a moment, but did not flee. It remained there, watching them, as if some part of it was still searching for something. Then Elias spoke again, his voice torn by the duality of his existence. "Where is she?" And with that, he disappeared into the darkness. The following morning, while investigating the tracks, they discovered something terrible. Next to the creature's marks were others, small, barefoot, like those of a woman. Elias's pain was not unfounded. Clara was still alive. The following days were steeped in sepulchral silence, as though the very village of Piedra Moura was holding its breath. Each night was a burden, each dusk a sentence. The inhabitants no longer slept. The candles burned until dawn, while shadows danced on the weathered walls of the houses. Tomas and Cecilia kept watch at the church alongside Father Anselmo every night, but the beast did not return. However, the tracks kept appearing ever closer to the houses, as if Elias, or what was left of him, was searching for something only his broken soul could understand. On a full moon morning, a storm lashed the village. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the twisted forest. The wind howled like a tormented soul, and amidst a frenzy, Cecilia awoke with a start, her heart pounding like a drum. A muffled sound echoed inside the church, a cry. She followed the lament to the main door. Father Anselmo slept, exhausted, while Tomas snored in a corner, his knife resting at his side. Cecilia pressed her ear against the cold wood of the door. "Clara," the voice broken, hoarse, full of pain. "Where is my Clara?" Her body trembled. Elias's voice, though distorted by the beast, carried such profound sadness that her eyes filled with tears. But there was something more, a second sound, a delicate sob, almost human, coming from the darkness outside. Without thinking, she opened the door. Rain lashed the ground, and the night stretched like a black veil over the village. Standing a few meters from the church was Elias, or what Elias had become, a deformed figure, covered in soaked fur, with golden eyes gleaming under the flashes of lightning. But at his side, a woman, fragile, pale, dressed in tattered rags that had once been a dress. Clara, her eyes were empty, lost in a silent abyss. Her body was a specter, a shadow of what she had once been, but even so, she was there, alive, or something like it. Cecilia shivered, and before she could react, Tomas appeared behind her, followed by Father Anselmo. The creature growled, protecting Clara as an animal would protect its offspring. "Elias," murmured the priest, raising the crucifix, "are you still there?" The beast whimpered, as if the mention of his name hurt more than any blade. Clara said nothing. She only held the hand of the creature, or the man she had once loved. Tomas, driven by a desperate impulse, took a step forward. "Let her go," he said firmly, though his soul trembled. "She no longer belongs to you." Elias let out a howl that made the church walls vibrate. The full moon, now hidden by clouds, seemed to bleed its silvery light between the trees. But it was Clara who finally spoke. "I never left." Her voice was a whisper, a thread of life on the brink of extinction. "I was chosen." Her words cut through the air like invisible blades. Elias trembled, his wild eyes flickering. confused between the beast and the man. Cecilia understood at that moment. Clara was not just a victim. She was part of the curse. The beast roared again, but this time the pain sounded almost human. In a final act of desperation, Father Anselmo raised a crucifix and began to recite a prayer in Latin. The wind intensified, and the beastly figure of Elias faltered, as if the words burned his flesh. "Elias," Clara whispered, approaching him, "end this." An overwhelming silence fell over them all. The creature looked at her, his pain a bottomless pit, and in a brutal, desperate gesture, Elias tore his own chest with his claws, as if trying to rip the curse out from within. His final howl echoed through the forest, a sound so laden with suffering that it made the villagers cover their ears inside their homes. When morning came, all that remained was a trail of blood, footprints leading to the heart of the forest, and a ring, the same ring that had belonged to Clara, resting on the church's threshold. Elias and Clara vanished, swallowed by the darkness. The curse, it seemed, had not been broken but had merged with the veil of the forest, where love and terror would walk together for eternity. The village of Piedra Moura was never the same again.